now in video games, in tabletop gaming, in whatever the case you might be, whatever kind of thing you plug into that kind of gets to your geeky side, whatever it really is that lights your fire there. If we didn't have those kinds of experiences, we wouldn't even be here talking about it. So anyway, now this gets to a very important point that I wanted to bring up, which I think is a distinguishing feature of Goldeneye. And Commander Cobalt brought this up, and I think it is an intangible, and it is charm. Now, I want to expand on that a little bit. So, charm is obviously a difficult thing to define, but here's what I loved about Goldeneye. It had a kind of smarmy 007 feel to it, right? It's not only that there are little kind of tongue-in-cheek jokes, but that it's got this kind of, everything is very serious. We're in this very serious place, this very serious business of shooting people and blowing things up. But, you know, there's always these kinds of really funny things that are happening, like the chop, right? Or the golden gun, or, you know, proximity mines that you throw underneath somebody's spawn point. But even in the single player, there is a charm to Goldeneye that you simply don't find in other games. It's got a kind of sense of humor. And here's why I think that's important. Or where, let's say this is where I think it comes from. I think the charm is there because it's a sense of humor, and it mimics a kind of 007 feel, right? So it actually feels like a 007 kind of a game. Many of you jumped into the idea that Goldeneye was a unique experience. But none of you talked about the idea that it was a James Bond game, right? And that there was James Bondian charm about it. James Bond is known as being very charming, right? I think there is that charm intangible that Commander Cobalt is talking about is, I think, the way that it does homage to James Bond and brings all of that into one tight-knit, very, very well-developed. This is really the beginning of Rareware as the kind of quintessential best game developer in the world almost era. And I think, maybe it's not the beginning, but it definitely helps to continue that vision. I think you could argue that starts much earlier. But the point is, this really solidifies their position as one of the best game developers in the world because it's so airtight. Goldeneye is an airtight kind of experience. You'd be very hard-pressed to see a new game come out that had the tightness as a complete package, without patching, without any kind of enhancements, that Goldeneye did, right off the bat. It's got that charm, and I couldn't agree more. Commander Cobalt, 100% correct. I think that's absolutely the right answer. I think that's one thing that's very difficult to replicate. And one, by the way, that I don't think Halo gets to. Halo has its charm. Halo has its humor. Halo has its uniqueness. But Halo is never about charm. Reach has a sentimentality about it that I think is unique to it, but it's not the same thing. Halo has kind of an epic feel to it that is very sort of ethereal. Goldeneye is very real world. It just happens to be kind of funny and silly and campy, just like 007 and all of the 007 movies. Beyond the Stars, SCR, said that, brought up, I think, a point that's interesting. Not just that we have a split-screen multiplayer experience, but that for many of us out there, it might have been the first multiplayer experience that we had where we play with multiple people like this, like where you actually had a group of 4 folks that played a multiplayer game in the same room, or for many of you, maybe played multiplayer ever. This could have been one of the very first multiplayer games that you played with 4 folks at the same time. I think that's great. Remember the 64 had 4 controller slots. It was designed to be kind of a multiplayer interface, and I think it did many of those games actually did kind of capture that essence very, very well. So that kind of ties back in to the nostalgia element, doesn't it? Because I think many of you, this was your first multiplayer. It was not my first multiplayer experience. I did play some games online, but that were multiplayer games, but many of you, I think, are young enough, or even that are my age, might have this been the only, or not the only, but the first experience with multiplayer that you ever played. That certainly means that it's going to be difficult to capture the essence. And that first game that you play that has that kind of an experience is something you'll probably never really replicate. And Sly JD talked about that magic is kind of is a subjective experience, and that there is kind of the newness is what is really magical. And we've talked a little bit about that already, but I think that's a great idea. You know, maybe that it's not necessarily about the actual nuts and bolts of Goldeneye, or even say the charm of Goldeneye, but that when we step into a new game experience that gets it right, that really is a unique experience, that's something that is magic. And that any new experience like that that gets it right is a magical experience. And many of you mentioned that for other games that were a part of the Nintendo 64 lexicon, like Mario, or you know, a few of you talked about something like Banjo-Kazooie or Ocarina of Time. And I think there are pieces of this in all of those places. But I'm not sure that you're going to find a landmark game on the Nintendo 64 that sits so boldly in everyone's understanding of video games as Goldeneye. Goldeneye really is a watershed moment, and it's something that's almost impossible to recapture. Now, those were just a taste of all the comments that we had. I wanted to bring out my favorites as I always do, but also as I always do, I want to give you my thoughts on the matter. Do I think we'll ever see a game that will recapture the magic of Goldeneye? I'm going to say no. I don't think that we're probably going to see it. That being said, I think there are many games that pick up the mantelpiece, and that's why I think the idea Prangerade talked about, Halo, I couldn't agree more about that. It really does pick up the mantle of Goldeneye. It does some other things that are really cool. When I first played Halo, that's a magic and an experience I will never probably replicate. But it wasn't the same as Goldeneye. Now you can argue which game is better. And obviously Halo has Goldeneye beat in terms of the number of games, obviously, unless you consider some of the other remakes of Goldeneye to be canon as well. In any case, folks, there are many games that kind of pick up the mantle and kind of advance the ball and find new experiences. But I'm not sure if any games really have the kind of magic of Goldeneye. But let me bring this out. And I don't think anyone mentioned this, and I'm very surprised about this. Let me talk to you about something else I think is a quintessential part of Goldeneye, and is, I think, one of the most unique parts of it that makes it very special. I think many of you might have forgotten. I mentioned that this is a 007 game, but that means that it's also a licensed title. It's not just licensed in that it borrows a character. It's licensed in that it lines up. It's supposed to align with a specific theatrical release, which was Goldeneye, right? Now, say what you will about Goldeneye. For many folks, it happens to remain their favorite James Bond film. I think it's got to be top 5. If not the best, it's definitely top 5. And so you have a really, really good movie that the story gets told inside the game. And it's done really, really well. Now, I want you guys to think about that for a minute. I just said that a licensed video game followed the story of a movie and did it really, really well. How many games do you think I could actually say that about? Right? No, that's not the Weekly Ringer for next week, but maybe it should be. But the answer, guys, is maybe none. Okay? Until you get into like Lego Star Wars and all those kinds of things that retell it in kind of a joking kind of way, or a satirical kind of way, I'm not sure that there's any game that sits with Goldeneye at that level, guys. And I think that gets to the heart of what made Goldeneye so awesome. And many of you mentioned the first person, or the first player experience, the one-player experience, being very unique, but you didn't say why. This is why I think it is. I played Goldeneye several times through, enjoyed the hell out of it. Now, I did all that before I ever saw the movie. And for the very first time, in playing a licensed game, before seeing the movie, I can actually tell you that I knew all of the ins and outs of the entire story. I knew what was going to happen because I had played the game. Not that I knew kind of the big plot points and then there was a little bit of crap in between, right? I knew every single thing that was going to happen in Goldeneye because it happened in the 64 title. Now, maybe many of you saw the movie before you played the game, so that wasn't a factor for you. But let's put it this way, folks. It's so rare that I think we can safely say that Goldeneye holds a special place because of the fact that it allows for that kind of experience where you can really go through the movie. You can be 007. It's got the charm of 007. It's got the feel of 007. And what's more, it's got the same experience that you get when you actually go and watch the movie. And that is something I don't think I have ever seen recaptured. I've seen a hell of a lot of really great experiences, like say a BioShock or a Halo or a Half-Life. Games that are incredible universes that I would love to be a part of and love to see a film for. But I've never seen it go the other way and work as well as I've seen it work in Goldeneye 64. And I think it does a tremendous job. And I'm hoping if I went to go see Reloaded, it would do the same kind of thing. And maybe they would be able to recapture that kind of magic. And if another game does it, I'd be very surprised. So anyway, there's one aspect that I don't think has ever been replicated, and I'm not sure ever will be, which maybe puts me into the firm category of no, we will never see the magic of Goldeneye replicated. But I think I agree almost completely with what many of you said, in that there are many experiences from Goldeneye 64 that have kind of been picked up, replicated, and maybe even made better in other games. Does that mean it recaptured the magic? Maybe not, and maybe we're just chasing that old nostalgia dragon, as it were. But in any case, glad that everyone here agrees Goldeneye is a fantastic game, and it's going to be a tough act to follow. Which is why we ask questions like this, right? That's what the Weekly Ringer is all about. So, this is the last Weekly Ringer of, not the last one ever, don't worry. Some of you might be cheering, I don't know. But this is the last Weekly Ringer of the calendar year of 2011. So what I'm going to do is say that obviously we're going to keep going strong into 2011. It's been a great year. We've been going for the entire year of 2011, which is fantastic. So I am going to really enjoy kind of spending a little more time. I'm going to try to work a little harder on maybe making the experience of the Weekly Ringer as good as I can. Can't promise you anything right off the bat, but I'm definitely going to be recommitting to this in 2012. And so thank you to all of you that have been with me since the beginning. Now, let's talk about the Weekly Ringer for next week, which is something that I'm very excited about and can't wait to see what you guys talk about. Now, by talking about the Nintendo 64, several of you, actually we even had a link provided, one of you provided a link to the N64 kid on YouTube, the very famous video where the child goes absolutely mad because he got an N64 for Christmas. He unwraps it and just goes absolutely crazy, you know, a la getting a Red Ryder in the Christmas Story. Now, that's cool as hell. Several of us might have had those kinds of experiences. Maybe we didn't jump up and down and scream and, you know, run around in circles. Maybe you did. I don't know. But it got me thinking, and I wanted to ask something that was Christmas themed for this week. And so the question for next week's Weekly Ringer is this: what is the best geek gift that you've ever gotten for Christmas? You know, maybe the gift that made you jump up around and go nuts. You know, was it a particular video game you always wanted to get? Was it, you know, a gadget you've been looking for? Was it something, you know, was it something you kind of slipped hints for the whole year and you finally got it? You know, maybe tell us what it was, and then tell us, you know, what you did, or if it's important, or if you just said, wow, I just really, really wanted that, right? And, you know, if you have a video, post it. But anyway, I'm really interested to see what the best and the coolest things you guys ever asked for Christmas and got. You know, what are those cool, geeky kinds of gifts that you got that you really just loved, a la the N64 kid. Here's hoping that you got what you're going to use for that particular question this year. I certainly hope that. By the way, for any of you wondering out there, I did get Skyrim. That's going to make my life very difficult because I have a funny feeling it's going to start sucking away my time. But that's okay. Still committed to the Weekly Ringer, and I have a funny feeling, hint, 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 that we will be talking about Skyrim fairly soon, because even having only played a few minutes of it to this point, I am just enthralled. So those of you that said, hey, you need to get this, you were absolutely right. Luckily, I have sweet, wonderful friends that would give me such a thing. So that is the Weekly Ringer for this Christmas week. I hope that you guys had a very Merry Christmas again, and I can't wait to see